Yellow, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for 3 or 4 or 5 levels of kelp. It's turned into the cow farm situation. I even made a portal spam one. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I didn't do portal spam. Ah, crap. I forgot I did do portal spam. Let's get to it. Yeah. There's one with portal spam, but I don't recommend you build it, and I'll get into why. I've been holding this video for a while. I started these back in, I think it was like 1.18.3 or something like that, and I just never felt great enough about the designs to actually finalize the video. I kind of always thought about, this would be better. I figured, you know what, it's time to finally bite the bullet. These farms work. They're good. They get you kelp, and we can go from there. So normally in 3 levels, we start out talking about spawn mechanics, but you find kelp in the ocean and it grows in water. There, we're done talking about the spawning mechanics. But since we don't have to talk spawn mechanics, I suppose we can talk the use for kelp. So first of all, kelp on its own, I mean, one use, making bubble columns. Other than that, meh. You can smelt it down to get dried kelp and you can eat it, but it's a terrible food source. But then after you smelt the kelp into dried kelp, you can put 9 kelp together and get yourself a kelp block, which is actually a pretty darn good source of fuel. It burns for 200 seconds, so that's 4,000 game ticks. So technically you could reuse it as fuel to make more kelp blocks and you get a nice profit out of it then. And kelp itself also has a 30% chance to raise the level on a composter. So technically you can use it to make bone meal. I don't think it's going to replace any bone meal farms, especially with one of the designs we're going to get into. But you can actually use it to make yourself some bone meal. I mean, if you really want to get weird, kelp is a 30% chance to raise that level. A dried kelp block is a 50% chance to raise the level. But considering, 9 times 30% versus 1 times 50%, this is like building a creeper farm in the end. So down in the video description is going to be the world download where you can download this world and you're going to see all these designs for yourself. You can come in here, grab your schematics, mess around with stuff, break it, whatever you want to do. So all the farms are going to be surrounding the spawn point, and let's start off here with the dirt sheep design. Now, none of this glass is actually required. We're just including the glass so you can kind of see what's going on in there. As you can see, the pistons just fired off and broke all the kelp. That's going to then flow up because we have the water regenerating right here on the sides. We have water sources that's going to flow in, regenerate the water. So this is water sources in the kelp, water sources on the sides here. That turns this to water sources. And then it flows up into the flowing water, all down to the center where it then flows down over to our hoppers. So just this right here, this is about 450 an hour. Again, not much, but it's dirt cheap. All we're using is we're just using an item despawn clock. So right here, some of the kelp that comes out of the farm is going to run over this hopper. It's going to fill this hopper and dropper up. And then each time it goes off, it's going to shoot out one of these items. It's going to go onto the pressure plate. Once that item despawns, then it's going to unrelease this pressure plate, turn on this torch, and set off the pistons. It's going to shoot out another item, retract the pistons, and then wait for the next one. So if you have the need for a quick and dirty, you don't want to mess around in the nether, but you want to get yourself some farms up, this will get you there. And you can expand that off, just kind of repeat your signal over, take this same line out and put on some more modules, just have it flowing over here into the water, and you're ready to go. So while that may only be useful when you have the need for dirt sheep rules, there are plenty of other designs we can take it to level 2, and we're going to look at 2 different types of a level 2. Right over here, we have what's kind of your bulk standard flying machine design. The nice thing about this is you can turn it off, let the kelp grow up. We could even make this a little taller if you wanted to have more room for the kelp to grow. And so we just have water sources in there, and then water sources on top of the scaffolding, which is then going to send that over to the water streams down below. You can technically take these trapdoors out. The only reason I place those is because you can't just place water on top of scaffolding. It just wants to place in the scaffolding. So you just, fill in the water here on these trapdoors, and then it can fill in the rest itself. Or if you don't want to leave this sitting and do all one big harvest, you want to keep like your hopper count low, then you can just keep this running on a regular basis. So for this one, all you got to do is stand on this pressure plate. So let me spawn a bot for that. All right, so we'll drop the bot on that pressure plate. We're going to see that the first one is going to launch, and these are going to launch in sequence. So even though we only have, we have 4 chambers, we're only going to run one machine at a time. That's so that we can keep our entity count lower. All right, if you're using these designs with flying machines, you don't want to set them off all at once. Otherwise, you're just going to have so many entities, it's just going to be a big lag spike. So we have these nice long sections where the flying machine is going to run over. And then when it returns to its docking station, it's going to send off the next section. So I'll go ahead and turn on mini HUD here. You can see, even though we have a bunch of entities coming in this case, the MSPT is not that high, but again, we're in a empty world here. So, you know, if you're talking about adding on 8 MSPT for just this one section going off, imagine if all the sections were going off at the same time. You can end up lagging out a server if you're doing these all at once. So we just use the returning of one machine to set off the next one, and so on and so forth. Now, Kelp does need random ticks to grow, so it does need a player within that random tick range. That's about 128 blocks. If you want more info on exactly how you calculate that, check out, there's a bunch of information online. Mango has done it. There's information in Tweakaroo on how you can look that up. So even though we're using flying machines, which are not unload proof, you need a player here loaded in order to do this anyways. So this one items are coming in. We're just doing a little bit of batching. This set right here with the 4 modules is 17K an hour. But remember, if you decide that you want to do this where you're going to let it all grow and then run the machines once and then let it all grow again, maybe, you know, the server owner wants it that way. I don't know. Then you're going to need a lot more hoppers to handle this, or you're going to have to recycle the items, because right now you can see that last batch that we just saw was from the return of the flying machine. So it's, you know, something more like this. Whereas the items flowing in that we get when it's fully grown like that, a lot more items are coming through. And that's really all to say about that. Once again, this can be extended. You can add on more modules if you want. But at that point, by the time this module comes back, the last one, I don't think there's really any point on adding in more modules. Because as you can see from this first one, which is about to launch, we're already getting some more kelp growing back. And that kelp is going to grow as this machine flies across. So this is going to go across, break this, but then as it's coming back, there's going to be some more to break. You know, these other sections are growing well. So I don't really think there's much reason to add on a bunch more modules. Now, while both these versions require either a player or a bot to be within that random tick range, let's look at some ones that can be chunk loaded. So the only way we can do that is with growing kelp with bone meal. So you can also apply bone meal to the bottom of a kelp plant, and it will grow 1 kelp plant level per bone meal used. I believe it used to be that you could hit it with bone meal and it would be a random chance to grow a certain amount, but now it's just a 1-to-1. So we're literally basically converting bone meal to kelp. So at this stage, there's no point in then using kelp to make bone meal again, because then you'd be losing bone meal. So this version here is using El Mango's bone meal moss farm in order to get us our bone meal. And that's because we're going to run each of these 4 slices at 9K an hour, so every 8 game ticks. So these 4 slices together makes 36K an hour. Now, kelp, in order to grow, needs water to grow into, at least flowing water. It doesn't need to be a water source, but it needs to be flowing water. So if we use pistons to push this out, the problem is going to be that our water's not going to come back, and no matter how much we bone meal it, we're not going to get any more kelp coming out of that. So I'll just hit this with bone meal, and I mean, you can't hear, but I'm just clicking away at this. Fast right click, nothing's happening because there's no water for it to grow into. So in this version up there, we're using chests because we can waterlog them and the water can flow out of them. So then the water can flow back down. So even when we punch this water out, it's going to be able to replace. You see how it takes a little bit there? I'm going to slow down the game here to 5 ticks per second. And we can see when I set that piston off and punch it out, it takes a moment for that water to come down, because water has a flow rate that it only wants to flow every 5 ticks. So even though we can set off a dispenser every 4 game ticks and a piston every 4 game ticks, you're going to see we're not getting water consistently in each of those cycles. So even though the clock is running at a nice fast speed, you're still not going to get that much kelp out of it. In fact, let me go ahead and just put some bone meal in here. So we can see we're getting some kelp out of it, but definitely not 1 kelp every 4 game ticks. So that's why we're setting it off every 8 game ticks. It also has a benefit of then we only need 1 hopper to feed into the dispensers to give it bone meal. But we're going to see when I turn this on, not only is it going to activate the bone meal farm to feed us our bone meal back in here, but we have that water flowing down just at the right time so that we can actually generate that kelp in. And then we are giving this a little bit of delay, so you can see the clock is kind of off here. It's coming up to the top at a different tick than it is at the bottom. So we're just setting off the droppers, and then we're just setting off the pistons. We don't want to actually set them off at the same time like I did over there, because then we're not going to get anything. That's because dispensers, I think I said droppers before, but dispensers, they actually have a 2-tick delay before they actually spit out their item or use their item when they're actually ticked, when they're actually powered. So we need a little bit of delay in between those. So that's why we just have these on a different clock cycle. But let me go ahead and turn the tick rate back down. We'll go ahead and turn this on, and we can see what we're getting is that kelp is going to grow in the same tick that it's getting broken. So we're not even seeing the plants grow. We're just seeing that kelp just pop off right out of there. But you'll notice we always have water there for the kelp to grow into. So every tick we're getting some. Then all we're doing is we're just pushing it out through these fence gates so that it falls into a water stream. You will notice sometimes some of them are going to land on the edge and kind of float there, but their hitboxes will float up above the water level and then get pushed out by the pistons. So there we go. We saw it just get pushed out, and then it goes down into the water stream here. So here it is at normal game speed of 20 TPS. We can see it's just popping off every 8 game ticks there. Now, this technically could be tileable. You can add on more of these. Why didn't I do that? You can see in order to feed this, we're going to have a pretty big section of moss here. I mean, if you're doing 36,000 kelp per hour, that means you need 36,000 bone meal per hour. So I thought this was a pretty reasonable rate. I mean, you can add on more modules to the moss farm, but at that point, you're getting kind of ridiculous. If I turn back on mini HUD so we can see our MSPT, you can see we're actually getting a little high up there, not because of these items down here, but because the moss-based bone meal farm just creates so many entities. So what do you want to do if you want to earn kelp but don't want to have a bone meal farm running at the same time? Well, let's say you already have your supply of bone meal. Then this is that same tileable version, just with some shulker unloaders then. So you can see we have shulkers of bone meal, and there's our bone meal right there going into this chest. That unloads directly into the dispenser. The dispenser then shoots it out. We break it with the piston, same thing. We have waterlogged chests here in the back to give us water flowing down. So each one of these modules is then 9K per hour. We have the same thing where we have that clock. That's just doing a little bit of an offset. So we have this 8 game tick clock here. And then we have a couple more ticks of delay before it goes into this other line over here. You will notice these lines are just delayed, offset a little bit. So let me just go ahead and turn this off because we can just tile this up. It would help if I didn't break a rail out of the way. So now you can see, even though we're getting a lot more items out of it, so a lot more kelp out of it, our MSPT is not nearly as high because we don't have to worry about the bone meal that's also feeding it. So this right here is tiled up to 189,000 per hour. Now, why is 189,000 per hour still a level 2 design? Well, like I said, that means you have to feed it that much bone meal. There's no reason you can't make like a hopper line to feed these chests and all that. And then same here, the empty shulker output, have a hopper line feeding back on that. But this is the basic premise. The idea is you would take a slice of it, take the original clock, and then take your output and kind of make it whatever scale you need it to. So again, each slice is going to be about 9,000 per hour. Well, not about, it is going to be 9,000 per hour as long as you can feed it the bone meal. As soon as it runs out of bone meal, it's going to slow down a lot, although technically it could produce some kelp because we did have some ticks there where the water was flowing down and the kelp could random tick into that water. I mean, this is going to be like 5 per hour without the bone meal. So you got to have a good source of bone meal to do this version. And now for level 3. I don't recommend this. So there is a random chance, and I'm going to see if I can find a spot. There we go. There's a spot right there. So there is a chance that during these 6 game ticks, when you're waiting for this observer to go off, so basically the observer is observing that it grew, then this observer is observing that, this observer is observing that, so we have our 6 game ticks there, then the piston fires. There is technically a chance with this many freaking kelp plants that you're planting, because this is a cube and each level is a bunch of plants. There is a chance that it could technically double grow before that piston actually fires off, and then what you're going to get is some water filling up that top there. Now in this one, it's still going to push into the portal, so that's fine. But if it starts to grow on each layer, then it's going to get worse and worse and worse until eventually this whole thing is only spitting like, I don't know, 80%, maybe 75% of its kelp that is breaking with the piston into the portal, because it does get a random trajectory. So that's all it is just this slice of these things tiled over and over again. Again, I don't recommend this. I'm not going to go into it too much. Mango Skyblock vid, he talked a lot more about Kelp Farm and made kind of a better version of this that's not going to have those same breakage problems. I mean, you'd if you built this and it happened to every single water source, you'd still get some, like I said, because it's mostly knocking towards the portal. Some of it's just going to flow up to the top and just kind of hang out there in the water source, though. But I decided to leave this one in mainly because this is a hopper minecart breaking nether unloader. So I'll have to bot there in the overworld so that kelp is still going to get random ticked. And we have a nice system here that's going to break the hopper minecart. So this is based on Mango's hopper minecart unloader. And then all we're doing, we don't have water streams that we can send the items in. So we're just pulling out that rail on top of the trapdoor every once in a while. Aligning our items as we normally would with an ender chest and some honey. I mean, this could be a regular chest. Yeah, we don't have movable block entities in Java, so that could be a regular chest. And then that is aligning those up where it's going to get shot over the hoppers. And then you can put, you know, your favorite shulker box loader here, or you can just put a chest line if you really want to. It is nice because it's self-loading. It's all contained within a single chunk. The clock is just hopper, with one item in it going around in a circle 6 times, so we don't have to worry about the clock breaking. And the other reason I don't really recommend it is this is only 117,000 per hour. So all this obsidian, all these pistons, all these observers, all this kelp, all this water placing, only 170,000 an hour. I mean, I feel like getting a bone meal source and then running this is going to end up being quicker. I mean, look at the size of this compared to the size of this. And this is faster. So that brings me to the end of the video where I want to leave a note here. You'll notice I'm not that happy with that design here. And I've got some quirks with each one of these designs. You don't have to come up with the fastest farm, the best farm, the most compact farm, the largest farm out of anything in order to have fun doing it. I like doing these videos. I like doing design on YouTube because I enjoy spending time in creative mode in Minecraft, coming up with machines, trying to come up with ideas. Sometimes I don't always come up with new ideas. They have some problems that I have to work out, but that's what I enjoy out of it. If you want to come up with your own design for a farm, or you want to take some ideas that you see in this video and turn it into something of your own, that's really the purpose of these videos on my channel. So that's why I decided to go ahead and end up releasing this, even though it's been a while, is because that's what I've kind of not been getting the feeling of lately with some of the comments on my channel. I think a lot of the community is great. I love you guys to death. But I do want to make sure that we remember that my channel is not about, hey, build this block by block or you're an idiot. My channel is more about, I want you to learn how these things are working so that you can have fun doing it for yourself. Sure, go ahead and take some schematics of these and build these if you're just like, you know what, I just need a farm that works. I just need the stupid kelp to make a map art, and then I don't ever need kelp again. But just remember to keep having fun in the game. And if you're not having fun in life, just remember it's okay not to be okay. If there is something keeping you down, keep your chin up because things will get better, I promise you. But in the meantime, don't stress yourself out by trying to fake it until you make it. It's okay not to be okay. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.